just like that, we're almost at the end of February. And this week, our conversation is all about excuses. Um, Not other people's excuses, your excuses. And it's simply because leadership is hard, and it really starts with learning to lead yourself well. And the only way you can lead yourself is, how you live in the private spaces that other people don't get to see. And I realized as I've been preparing for our conversation today that actually excuses can literally be so subtle you wouldn't even realize if you're really not paying attention to it. Excuses sometimes are even respectful. Like, as leaders, we want to be respectful people. And sometimes, literally, that respect you're trying to give or trying to be can become, your excuse doorway, if you will. And this is the big one that excuses really often, most of the time, is logical because we analyze things and realize actually, yeah, this is logic. Let's go ahead with that. The truth is, over time, the more excuses you give to yourself and the more excuses you tell yourself will actually erode your authority and your influence as a leader. Because you have to be able to exercise authority over yourself, first of all, and then, having authority, not as in being dun, dun, dun on top of people's heads, but when you're a leader and leading people, it's authority that's been given you to serve, really, because that's the heart, the beginning and the end of being a leader is to serve others. And so in the workplace, you have that authority that's been given to you. And then the final layer of that is your moral authority. So where your life becomes full of excuses, it will take away, again, going over it, the authority you have to exercise discipline over yourself, other people that you're leading, and then morally. So if you're going to be all in, truth is you can't build a leadership life that just runs on justifying why this or that or this and not that. Right. So today we're really going to go into defining what an excuse actually is, how it can weaken your leadership, even how it creeps in, and how to eliminate it in practical terms. So if we begin to look at, okay, how do we define excuse? It's really a reason given to justify a failure to act or to avoid responsibility, right? And the dictionary definition is basically the reason we give to to be ineffective, to not take action. Not nice. Not nice. And it's not the same as a legitimate obstacle because that happens too. Sometimes they're legitimately obstacles that we have to navigate as leaders. And excuses is not one of those. It can also be perhaps the story that we tell ourselves that perhaps makes, inaction acceptable. Maybe an excuse could be something you're telling yourself to kind of maybe cushion, the discomforts that you're having. Sometimes we give ourselves excuses to reduce urgency. Um, and the ultimate truth is the more we repeat excuses either to ourselves or other people, means the more we lower the standards that we're either holding ourselves accountable at or holding other people at. And having excuse or making excuses is also not being, it's not really about, the information you have or information you're given to say, hey, I'm making an excuse. Well, I'm giving them that information. No, the bottom line of excuses is simply about avoidance. Like really, really simple as that. And before we go any further forward, I know that sometimes some of you be like, "Oh, I missed the new episode." So please make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you would get every week when we release a new episode, you would be able to get access to that immediately. And also makes it worthwhile, spending time here with you and sharing and having a conversation with you. So please don't forget to subscribe. So coming back to the conversation we're having, like what do I mean by excuses will undermine your leadership? And certainly from my own experience, but as well as having had the privilege of working with many incredible leaders, there's four key things I've come to realize and see as a pattern that keeps, resurfacing over and over and over again. And number one, not necessarily in this specific order, but just the four key ways in which like giving yourself excuses can undermine your leadership is it damages trust. So every time you say, hey, I'm gonna do something, but then you don't do it, and then you justify it, it's like it takes away your credibility. And you know that leadership or being a leader, you have to be nobody's gonna follow a leader who they who they can't trust or don't trust or feel like they don't have credibility. And you're not owed those things. You built them, you earned them. So again, if you're giving your word, then justifying why you didn't do it, you're like layer by layer by layer taking away your own credibility. And it's important to also mention this that we have to be able to, be trustworthy first with ourselves. And so when we begin to give excuses to ourselves, then it makes it harder for us to trust, our own self and to lead ourselves with the integrity that we need to lead ourselves, first of all. And the truth is, if I can't even trust myself, if I can't trust what I'm saying or what, the commitment I'm making to myself, ultimately, I'm going to not trust other people. I'm going to hesitate in my commitments and in the way that I'm dealing with other people as well. So trust is very important. And it's the number one thing that you have to be able to give to yourself and have within yourself. And number two is that excuses lowers our own internal standards. And I talked about this in a previous episode. What we tolerate from ourselves becomes like the baseline with which we do life and with which we lead. And so if we're in that space or constantly delaying, the things we have to do, the commitments that we've made to ourselves, to other people, we kind of like normalize it. Therefore, it means that inconsistency, because when you're not doing what you're meant to be doing, when you're not keeping the commitments you've made, it just creates inconsistency. So when we lower the internal standards with which we hold ourselves, then it means that we make our inconsistency become acceptable. And then, the standards kind of like shift downwards. And that's not okay. As a leader who constantly gives excuses, you erode or take away that internal authority that you have it. But the truth is, though, people may not necessarily say to your face, but they notice it. Are you reliable? Are you trustworthy? Can they count on you? Are you dependable? Do you keep your commitment? How much is your word worth? Right. So if you expect discipline from others, then you have to stop excusing yourself. Because if you expect, a higher standard from others, and then you hold yourself to a much lower standard, there is a gap, and that gap will show, and people will know it. They might not tell you, but they will know because they can see it, right? And so that weakens your influence as a leader, and ultimately the integrity that you have as a leader will be impacted. Excuses also can stall, really make your growth like really, really little. Like you won't grow very much if you're a person that is constantly giving excuses. Why is that? Because growing as a leader is not always comfortable. It like that's the truth. It's not comfortable growing as a leader. And I mean, even when you take a baby, right? When babies are growing, when they're teething, right? Because they're not born with teeth. When they're teething, it's so uncomfortable. It gives them such discomfort. But we know that it's important for them to go through that teething process because then they can have nice adult teeth like this, right? Nice adult teeth to be able to enjoy, food. And it's part of growth. So the truth is, growth would always come with discomfort, some level of discomfort. But if we live and lead constantly with excuses, then it's going to um, maybe feel like, hey, this feels a lot more comfortable, but ultimately it will impact your leadership. It would affect your capacity, it would affect your influence, it would affect your credibility, it would affect your integrity, it would affect so much more than you actually perhaps would have noticed or would have been willing to pay the price for. So I want us to look at, some of the subtle as well as the obvious ways in which excuses can actually creep in. If we start with the subtle ways, it's, that thought that comes to us, there's a lot of things moving. Like sometimes we all have really packed weeks, perhaps, or even a packed day. And so you kind of like, tell us, that, what, I get to that when things calm down a little bit. Now, that's a subtle way in which excuses can creep in because, like, frankly, saying that, yeah, sounds like, I'm being responsible, I'm pacing myself. But truth is, it's an excuse, right? Another subtle way is like when we overplan. So everything is, packed. It makes it really hard to take action. It makes it really, really hard to follow through. So it's important to pace ourselves better. It's important to start something and finish it well, than start, three or four different things and not be able to finish anything. So be mindful and be aware of your capacity, where it is. And if you're in that season of, stretching and increasing your capacity, then you want to um pay attention to, okay, fine, like things like how long is this going to take me from beginning to end? And then you plan accordingly. So take time, research, refine the research, understand what is going to require, that project or that thing you're saying yes to, what is it actually going to require of you, and make sure that you can accommodate that within your current capacity. Okay. And then another way that, in a subtle way, excuses can creep in is like things that have already been decided on. So you've made a decision, this is set, you know that's how you're going to work on it. Your team knows this is what we're doing. And then it's like, oh, I've got a new brainwave. Let's do this instead. It just stalls things and makes it really, really harder to actually follow through. So when you make a decision, just stick to it. Yes, of course, there's times where you have to revisit that decision because seasons change, capacity increases, your growth, comes in. So yes, if you're in that season, absolutely. But even when you revisit it, it's not like undoing every single thing. Just look at, is this, revisiting going to actually make this better, or is it going to cause a delay? If it's going to cause a delay, then you know it is an excuse, right? And it will impact it. So don't do it. Simple as. And then the obvious ways in which we make excuses is, hey, I don't have time, lack of time. The truth, like we all have 24 hours. I don't have 26 hours. And, my team don't have 27 and nobody else has 18. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Right. And I really want you to hear my heart. When we think we don't have time is often a case of priority. Where is our priorities? Like, what have we prioritized that we perhaps shouldn't have? And I'm sure you've all heard this, what is urgent and important, what is urgent but not important, what is important and not urgent. So you've got those four quadrants. That's how you can prioritize. This is urgent, this is important. That becomes front of mind. This is urgent but not important, or this is important but not urgent. So categorize all the things that you've got to do and then prioritize well. Then you would be able to get yourself out of that cycle of excuses as in, well, I don't have a lot of time. Um, Number five is circumstances. Like, come on. Yes, it rains. We're in London. It rains, it's cold, the sun comes out. Like, you can literally get all the seasons in one day, even in 1 hour, right? And so people change. Like your energy, the how you feel in yourself can change in a single morning. The markets or consumers or customers, right? There are external, if you studied economics, there's external forces or situations that you're never going to be in control of. And so you can't blame your circumstances. You can look at, okay, what's the reality of what we're dealing with? And you can plan accordingly, like, capacity, right? Set your priorities. What is urgent? What's important? That becomes front of mind. And then you work on it bit by bit by bit by bit, like eating an elephant. You eat it piece by piece by piece, not in one whole, right? So, again, hopefully, these will help you in being able to catch yourself when, excuses are creeping in, right? Now, how do we eliminate excuses? Because it's really, really important that we are able to, first of all, catch ourselves and then have the tools to, reverse it, to flip it on its head and not be a leader that is living from the place of excuses. So, number one is we have to be able to separate like our own like explanation from justification. Not every reason, I mean, I think it's fair to say not every reason is an excuse, but you have to ask yourself this question. Okay, am I explaining something to avoid being responsible, or am I justifying why I'm not doing this yet? Or am I justifying why this has been delayed? They're two separate things. So, how do you do it? Take something that like you've delayed on doing it. Could be an email, could be a book, could be an appointment you need to book for yourself. It doesn't matter. Just take something that you've delayed doing it and then write down the reason why it's been delayed. Then you ask yourself, okay, what action is still possible despite this delay, right? What action can I take irrespective of this delay? Okay. Point two is have like non-negotiables, even if they're really, really small. It's okay to have non-negotiables, and they don't have to be really big. It can be really, really small non-negotiables. Why am I saying that? Because many excuses can hide inside overwhelm. And sometimes, like, we all go through that process. We all have, those days or those moments where it can be a little bit overwhelming. That's fine. It's part of life, it's part of leadership. But instead of like postponing a whole entire task, look at what is the next small step that I can take And then take that small step rather than pushing everything back. Just take one little step. That would help you to be able to come out of that mindset or space, of excuse. So if you can't complete an entire project, just send an email, right? If you can't write the whole project or everything, proposal in one go, just draft the outline. Just get the outline done. So taking that one little step means that you're not negotiating with yourself on, you know what, I'm going to come back this later. I don't have time, whatever, whatever, whatever. It helps you to make that commitment to yourself because it's easier to take a small step than to take a big leap. Okay. Number three, we all have mental exit doors. You know what exit doors are? You have them in public buildings. They're usually closed, well signed, and you go for it like when there's a fire or when there is, the need to evacuate everybody out very, very quickly, or even take an airplane that has exits, right? It's there to enable you to get out in case there is an emergency. Everything remains optional. Everything is negotiable if you have a mental exit door, which is, this is an emergency. Let me go through the exit door. Like, no. So choose one area this month or in the rest of this month or in March where retreating back, shrinking back is not an option. Is not an option. And you have to learn to say, this is going to happen. I'm going to do this. And take out all the, language that's like, oh, maybe Thursday. Thursday's too far. Today's Monday. So, Thursday, I'm going to come back to it. No, this is happening. So all those mental exit doors, remove the signs, remove the exit door, remove it all. Remove it all. And don't make, the procrastination an option. Don't negotiate with procrastination. 4, we talked about this already in depth. Raise your self-standard. If I was leading somebody and they're behaving like this, what would I say? Then say it to yourself. Say to yourself, keep that commitment to yourself. Hold yourself to the highest standard first before even other people hold you to any standard at all. You have to learn to hold yourself to a much higher standard. Finally, your internal language. I'm too busy. I'm in this season. Can I circle back to you? I'll revert back to you. No, I'm going to schedule this. Can we reduce, XYZ? How about we get the draft outline first? How about, we focus on the next step instead? You know what? We're not going to be able to finish everything this week, but we can get the draft done. That is a better language. You see how it shifts? And it takes away the urge, the need to actually make excuses. So, in summary, when we make excuses, we damage our own internal trust bank. We reduce and if not careful, keep ourselves in a trust deficit. We lower the standards with which we hold ourselves and with which we lead. We, remove the influence that we have because that's what leadership is. Leadership is influence, nothing else, nothing more. And we delay our ability to grow. Right. So when we're leading without excuses, we need to have clarity. We need a whole load of discipline and ownership and accountability and self-control. Right. So your excuses might protect your comfort, might cushion the discomfort that you have. You can justify and normalize excuses, but it only makes you a weak leader. And leadership begins where explanation ends and where we begin to take responsibility. If you won't accept it from your team, don't accept it from yourself. Integrity is built in private decisions in your own private life. So, for your action this week, I want you to identify one recurring excuse in your leadership, write it down, eliminate it, and replace it with better action. Replace it with a decision, replace it with an action, replace it with a commitment. Just one action, complete it within the next 48 hours. Don't negotiate with yourself. So, finally, in closing, if you're really serious about being all in, then remove excuses from your vocabulary. Life is not easy. Life is not easy. Yes, life is hard. Yes, life happens. But your leadership matters. Your leadership matters. Growing as a leader is important. And to be able to do that requires that you be courageous, you be disciplined, you be all in, and then move. I hope this has in some way helped you to realize and recognize where perhaps you're making excuses in your leadership. And we're here as Nations of Women to support you in your leadership. If you're looking for a tribe, a community that, can sharpen you, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron, then we're the community for you. And whatever you do this week, be brave, be disciplined, be all in. And I'll see you again next week. And that's all for this week.